G. M. Steklov, 1928. History of the First Internationalists is a summary of the book. Part 1-1. Forerunners of proletarian internationalism, ancient and medieval roots. The idea of human unity has existed since antiquity, fostered by empires like Rome and institutions like the Catholic Church. Class solidarity across borders. Medieval ruling classes, emperors, kings, nobles, and clergy united to suppress peasant and craftsman revolts, demonstrating early cross-national class solidarity. Examples include crusades against Alcino of Navarra's followers in Italy, 5 crusades against the Hussites, united Catholic and Protestant forces against the German Peasants' War, 1525. Early seeds of internationalism. Despite suppression, oppressed groups began to recognize the need for international solidarity, exemplified by the Taborites. French Revolution and bourgeois internationalism. The French Revolution briefly revived the concept of international solidarity as the revolutionary bourgeoisie called for a united front against European monarchies. Capitalism's contradictions. Capitalism's creation of a world market simultaneously promotes international connection and national conflict, hindering lasting international brotherhood. Proletariat as champion of internationalism. The proletariat, a product of capitalist development, is inherently driven towards international solidarity in its struggle for socialism. Shared struggle across borders. Workers in all capitalist countries face similar issues like low wages, long hours, and poor working conditions. They realize that to improve their situation, they need to unite and fight together, regardless of nationality. Competition hinders progress. Capitalists use international competition to their advantage, making it harder for workers in one country to achieve better conditions without similar advances in others. This highlights the need for international worker solidarity. Exploitation fuels internationalism. The proletariat, being at the bottom of the social ladder, experiences and witnesses oppression firsthand. This leads them to fight against all forms of injustice, including national oppression and inequality, fostering international solidarity. War unites workers against a common enemy. The devastating impact of war, with its economic burdens and human costs, pushes the working class to unite against militarism and strive for peace through international cooperation. Socialism requires international collaboration. The interconnectedness of capitalist economies means that the socialist revolution can only succeed if workers across the globe join forces to achieve their common goal of emancipation. Bourgeoisie's international influence. The bourgeoisie's pursuit of profit has created a globalized system of production and consumption. This has eroded national industries and created a dependence on global markets. It has led to the homogenization of culture and the rise of a world literature. Even the most barbarian nations are drawn into the system through trade and the spread of capitalist production. Proletariat's development and struggle. The proletariat emerges alongside the bourgeoisie and inevitably comes into conflict with it. This struggle evolves through stages. Individual worker versus individual bourgeois, localized conflicts within a factory or trade national class, struggle international workers' movement factors, driving proletarian unification. Industrial development concentrates workers in larger masses. Machinery reduces distinctions between crafts and equalizes wages. Competition and crises create shared precarity among workers. Improved communication facilitates connections between workers in different locations. Internationalism as a necessity. Capitalism has stripped workers of national characteristics and created a shared condition of exploitation. Workers have no country. Their interests transcend national boundaries. The bourgeoisie's globalization has laid the groundwork for proletarian internationalism. United action across borders is essential for the emancipation of the workers. The end of class exploitation within nations will lead to the end of conflict between nations. Capitalism's international nature. Bourgeois scholars like Rudolf Meyer recognize the inherent internationalism of capitalism, driven by mobile capital and a globalized economy. This golden international of capital imposes similar conditions on workers across nations, leading to a unified response from labor. The International Workingmen's Association arose as a natural outcome of this shared experience of exploitation, globalization, and worker solidarity. Émile de Lavelie highlights the increasing similarities between nations due to globalization. Shared economic problems, crises, and class struggles create a sense of international solidarity among workers. Local events can have global repercussions, emphasizing the interconnectedness of the world economy. Uniformity of the socialist movement. Werner Sombart observes a centralizing tendency within the socialist movement, driven by the uniform development of capitalism. This leads to a homogeneity of form and a shared internationalist outlook. Proletarian internationalism's distinctive features. Sombart identifies two key aspects of proletarian internationalism. Common interests. Workers across borders share a common enemy in capitalism and benefit from mutual support, information sharing, and coordinated action. Brotherhood of man. Proletarian internationalism is fueled by a deep sense of solidarity and shared humanity, transcending national divisions. Anti-nationalism. Proletarian internationalism is explicitly anti-national, rejecting chauvinism, imperialism, and war. It opposes all forms of national aggression and seeks peaceful cooperation between peoples. Inherent link between socialism and internationalism. Yashchenko emphasizes the fundamental connection between socialism and internationalism, rooted in the nature of modern economic life. Globalization and its consequences. The globalized economy has erased national boundaries in industry and commerce. This creates a community of interests among workers worldwide, necessitating joint action and international organization. It also demands a unified economic organization to replace the chaos of capitalist competition. Socialism's incompatibility with the nation-state. Socialism seeks to establish a planned and harmonious economy, which is impossible within the confines of competing nation-states. The existence of sovereign states perpetuates conflict and undermines the socialist goal of a classless society. Conflict between working-class interests and nation-states. The division of humanity into nation-states harms the working class. Wars and conquests primarily benefit the privileged few, while the people bear the costs. Internationalism as a primary concern for socialism. Due to these factors, the international problem has been central to socialist thought from its inception. 2. Harbingers of the international early British working-class movement and internationalism. The rise of large-scale industry and the Industrial Revolution in Britain led to the growth of a working-class movement with internationalist tendencies. Workers' struggles were connected to broader democratic movements, like support for the French Revolution and opposition to reactionary government policies. Early working-class organizations showed solidarity with international movements and causes. Chartism and internationalism. The Chartist movement, a significant early working-class political movement, displayed strong internationalist leanings. Chartists advocated for the solidarity of workers and oppressed people globally. They criticized the exploitive policies of the British bourgeoisie and supported causes like Canadian and Irish autonomy and Polish independence. Influence of continental Europe. Increased contact between Chartists and continental European revolutionaries in the mid-1800s further strengthened the internationalist character of the British working-class movement. This interaction led to the development of organizations that would pave the way for the First International. Geographic factors. Britain's island geography contributed to a unique national character in its working-class movement. Continental European workers, due to closer geographic proximity, developed internationalist sentiments earlier and with a more concrete focus. Early worker societies, 1830s to 1840s, focused on the emancipation of all workers, showed early signs of internationalism due to the diverse makeup of political refugees in Paris. Initially characterized by bourgeois democratic ideals of brotherhood and solidarity against oppression, gradually shifted towards a proletarian focus, emphasizing worker solidarity across nations in the struggle for political and economic emancipation. The Communist League, 1847 to 1851 successor to the Exiles League and the Federation of the Just, commissioned Marx and Engels to write the Communist Manifesto, 1848, which promoted proletarian internationalism and the historical mission of the proletariat. Replaced the old motto, "All men are brethren," with "Proletarians of all lands unite." Served as a precursor to the First International, with key figures like Marx, Engels, Lessner, and Icarius playing significant roles in both. Marx and Engels International Network. By 1843, Marx and Engels were connecting with revolutionaries and socialists globally, including the Chartist England, Polish and Russian refugees, including Bakunin, Italians, Belgians, Hungarians, etc. In 1847, Marx co-founded the International Democratic League in Brussels, while also prioritizing his involvement with the German Worker Society, which later merged with the Communist League. Evolution of the Federation of the Just. Relocated to London after the 1839 Blanquist uprising in Paris, became increasingly proletarian and internationalist, attracting members from various countries. Developed a communist workers' circle with a diverse membership and a focus on a pan-European revolution. Formation of the Communist League. Emerged from the fusion of the Federation of the Just, the German Workers' Society of Brussels, and Parisian German worker groups. Adopted the program of proletarian international socialism outlined in the Communist Manifesto. Held its inaugural Congress in London in the summer of 1847 and its second, formative Congress in London in November-December 1847, with Marx and Engels in attendance. The Communist League, 1847 to 1852, primarily a German organization. Their manifesto, predicting worldwide revolution, proved accurate with the 1848 uprisings, focused on spreading socialist ideas, less on direct action. Internal divisions, realists versus insurrectionists, led to its dissolution in 1851. Early internationalist efforts in England was the most advanced capitalist country with a strong working-class movement Chartism. Chartists were early proponents of international worker solidarity, connecting with revolutionary movements in other countries. Key figures like Marx and Engels were involved with the Chartist movement. Significance of England for the international England's advanced capitalism and organized working class made it the natural birthplace of the First International. British workers were the first to develop strong class consciousness. Understanding of class struggle has a historical and tactical principle, a sense of international solidarity with workers in other countries. Growth of internationalist sentiment developed in the 1830s alongside the Chartist movement's fight for democratic rights. Chartists actively engaged with international revolutionaries and movements. Growth of internationalist interest among Chartists late 1840s. Commemoration of revolutions. Chartists held meetings in London commemorating the Polish Revolution of 1831 and the Krakow Rising of 1846, showing solidarity with other European revolutionary movements. Influence of 1848 French Revolution. The February Revolution in France further fueled internationalist sentiments among British workers, echoing the impact of the French Revolution in the late 18th century. Solidarity with French Republic. A March 1848 meeting in Lambeth saw a resolution supporting the French Republic, an address to the French people, and a delegation to deliver it to the provisional government. Continued internationalism and actions, 1849 to 1850. Outrage at European reaction. The occupation of Rome and suppression of the Hungarian Revolution sparked widespread sympathy among British workers. Calls for intervention. Chartist Julian Harney advocated for armed intervention to support Hungarian rebels at a London meeting. Similar resolutions were passed in other cities. Protests against French suffrage abolition. A large London meeting in July 1850, with Chartist participation, protested the abolition of universal suffrage in France. Hyena of Brescia incident. Austrian General Haynau, known for his brutality, was attacked by London brewery workers, highlighting the workers' tangible hatred of reactionary forces. This incident became a rallying point and symbol of resistance. Support for Kossuth. London workers organized a demonstration to honor Hungarian leader Kossuth upon his arrival in England. The Fraternal Democrats, a precursor to the international founding and membership, established in 1844 by German, Polish, and Italian refugees in London, the Fraternal Democrats became the first international working-class organization. Prominent Chartists like Ernest Jones and Julian Harney joined, with Harney playing an active role. Organizational structure. The Fraternal Democrats initially lacked a formal structure, but later adopted rules with national secretaries and an executive committee composed of representatives from each nationality. This structure influenced later international organizations, including the International, prototype for the International. The Fraternal Democrats' organizational model, with its multinational representation, served as a direct precursor to the International, founded just 17 years later. Its traditions and ideas helped pave the way for this landmark organization. Core principles. Universal brotherhood. The organization advocated for the mutual enlightenment of its members and promoted the idea of all people being brothers, emphasizing unity and equality. Rejection of inequality. They opposed all forms of hereditary privilege and social hierarchies, advocating for a more egalitarian society. Communal ownership. The Fraternal Democrats believed in the common ownership of land and natural resources, denouncing the concentration of wealth and exploitation of the working class. Internationalism. They rejected national prejudices and embraced international solidarity, considering all people as part of one human family. Activities and goals. Propaganda and agitation. Similar to the Communist League, the Fraternal Democrats focus on spreading their ideas and raising awareness rather than direct political action. Commemoration of revolutionary events. They organize meetings and demonstrations to honor past revolutions and contemporary struggles, fostering a sense of shared history and purpose. Focus on Polish independence. Reflecting a broader European interest, they actively supported the Polish struggle for independence from foreign domination. Call for International Congress. In 1847, they proposed an International Congress of Revolutionary Democrats, aiming to unite workers across borders. This idea was supported by Marx, who attended their event commemorating the 1830 Polish uprising. Internationalist and proletarian outlook. Leaders' perspective. The leaders of the Fraternal Democrats viewed nationality as a tool for class struggle, but ultimately believed in internationalism as the outcome of a successful proletarian movement. Harney's speeches. Julian Harney's speeches emphasized the interconnectedness of struggles for freedom across nations, highlighting that a victory for democracy anywhere benefits workers everywhere. Anti-war stance. They recognized that war often served the interests of the ruling class and sought to promote international solidarity as a path to peace and workers' liberation. Historical significance. Precursor to the International. The Fraternal Democrats' emphasis on internationalism and their organizational structure, with national representation, directly influenced the formation of the International Workingmen's Association, the First International, in 1864. Early expression of working-class internationalism. The organization represented a significant step in the development of working-class consciousness, demonstrating a growing awareness of shared interests and the need for international cooperation to achieve social change. Fraternal Democrats, pre-1848, aimed for political power for the proletariat to expropriate the bourgeoisie. Active in the 1848 revolutions, pushing for working-class action, weakened by middle-class defection and government repression, collapsed after the failed Parisian worker uprising in June 1848. Fraternal Democrats, post-1848, reorganized in 1849 with a new program focused on international worker solidarity, freedom of the press, political rights, and worker emancipation. Ultimately failed due to the decline of the British workers' movement, had the potential to become a true international organization if not for the 1848 reaction. Influenced the formation of the First International. Post-Fraternal Democrats, the idea of international worker solidarity persisted. The Crimean War revived interest in international worker politics. Ernest Jones tried to revive the Chartist movement in 1853. A Labor Parliament in 1854 created a new program. A committee was formed to welcome Barbès, a French revolutionary, to England. This committee evolved into the Welcome and Protest Committee, aiming for international democracy and opposing the League of Kings. The International Committee, formed from the Welcome and Protest Committee, aimed to unite workers internationally and oppose monarchies. Organized like the Fraternal Democrats and the First International, with secretaries for different nationalities, held meetings and protests, including one commemorating the 1848 French Revolution, addressed both political and economic oppression, advocating for worker control over capital, campaigned against the persecution of foreign refugees in Britain, issued a manifesto supporting self-determination for all peoples and nationalization of land and means of exchange. Prudentists influenced. A delegation of Prudentist workers from Paris arrived in 1856 to establish a universal league of workers. Their goal was worker emancipation through economic means, specifically cooperatives, rather than political action. This utopian project failed, but stimulated the International Committee. Key takeaways: the International Committee, though less influential than the Fraternal Democrats, played a crucial role in keeping the idea of international worker solidarity alive in the period leading up to the First International. It anticipated the First International's organizational structure and focus on international cooperation. The committee engaged with both political and economic issues, demonstrating a growing awareness of the multifaceted nature of worker oppression. The interaction with Prudentists highlights the diversity of socialist thought at the time and the ongoing debate about the best means to achieve worker emancipation. Manifesto to All Nations, May 1856, advocated for a universal democratic and social republic. Stressed the importance of internal social reform for peaceful international relations. Proposed expanding the International Committee into a larger international association. Suggested a membership system with dues and voting rights in national and international assemblies. Towards an international association, August 1856. A meeting was held with the Revolutionary Commune and other societies to form an alliance. The resolution emphasized the need for socialist and revolutionary national societies to unite within a global association. This structure aimed to strengthen international and national propaganda efforts and prepare for a successful future revolution based on solidarity. Decline in legacy. Despite these efforts, the International Committee and the proposed International Association ultimately faded by the early 1860s. The 1864 meeting in St. Martin's Hall, with its renewed call for an international association, highlighted the continuity of these efforts. Rothstein argues that the First International, while led by Marx and Engels, was built upon the foundation laid by these earlier organizations and individuals like Harney and Jones. The 1856 manifesto demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of the link between internal social structures and international relations. The proposed International Association shows a clear vision for a structured, dues-paying international worker organization with voting rights and assemblies. The emphasis on solidarity foreshadows a core principle of the First International. While ultimately unsuccessful, these endeavors represent a crucial step in the development of international worker organization and pave the way for the First International. The text underscores the importance of recognizing the contributions of lesser-known figures in the history of the international worker movement. 3. Foundation of the International Workingmen's Association. Capitalism drives international unity. The development of capitalism creates conditions that push the working class, proletariat, towards international unity. This is driven by shared oppression. Workers recognize that the ruling classes of all countries are united against them. Interconnected economies. The global capitalist market means that economic and political events in one country affect workers everywhere. Early attempts at international unity. Early socialist workers groups recognized the need for international cooperation, but the conditions weren't ripe for success until the mid-19th century. Factors contributing to this delay included insufficient development, the productive forces of capitalism and the size and strength of the working class needed further development, lack of major crises. Large-scale political and economic crises were needed to galvanize the working class. The rise of the proletariat. The period after the 1848 revolutions saw significant capitalist expansion, leading to the growth of both the bourgeoisie, capitalist class, and the proletariat. This growth fueled political activity, increased bourgeois activity, particularly in the formation of unified national states, e.g. Germany, Italy. Workers' movements. The emergence of organized labor movements pursuing their own class interests. Awakening and crises. The economic crisis of 1857, the political crisis of 1859, and the Franco-Austrian War led to a general awakening of both the bourgeoisie and the proletariat across Europe. Impact of the American Civil War. The cotton crisis caused by the American Civil War severely impacted British textile workers, shattering the period of relative calm that had followed the decline of the Chartist movement. New unionism in Britain. The crises led to increased strikes. Workers engaged in numerous strikes, often against the advice of moderate union leaders. Collective bargaining. The rise of working rules and collective bargaining agreements. Solidarity and new leadership. Strikes, though often unsuccessful, fostered working-class solidarity. New, more militant leaders emerged, pushing for worker unity. Trades councils. The formation of trades councils facilitated local organization and helped unify the labor movement. New trade unionism. This period marked the beginning of a new era of more assertive and unified trade unionism in Britain. The Junta. A group of influential figures emerged as leaders of the revitalized British working-class movement. Key members included William Allen, Secretary of the Amalgamated Society of Engineers; Robert Applegarth, Secretary of the Amalgamated Society of Carpenters; George Odger, a prominent London radical and leader of a shoemakers' union; Icarius, a German refugee and former member of the Communist League. Goals of the junta: modernize trade unionism, expand the focus of British unions beyond narrow craft interests, political engagement, encourage unions to participate actively in the political arena, political and social reforms. Under the junta's influence, unions began advocating for expanded voting rights, extension of the franchise to include more workers, improved labor laws, reform of outdated trade union laws and master and servant laws that favored employers, national education, improved access to education for the working class, revival of internationalism. The British working class experienced a renewed interest in international cooperation due to economic concerns. British workers, with their relatively higher standard of living, felt threatened by the competition of lower-paid continental workers. Strike-breaking. Employers used the threat of importing foreign labor to undermine strikes. Shared struggle. Union leaders recognized the need to connect with the broader international labor movement to strengthen their own position. Expressions of international solidarity. Support for Garibaldi. The London Trades Council organized demonstrations to welcome the Italian nationalist leader Garibaldi. Support for the Union in the American Civil War. Workers organized a meeting to express solidarity with the northern states fighting against slavery in opposition to the pro-Confederate stance of the British bourgeoisie. Support for oppressed nationalities. Workers demonstrated their support for struggles against oppression, including Polish resistance to Tsarist Russia. This agitation played a role in the formation of the First International. Situation in France. Repression and apathy. Following the 1848 revolution and the 1851 coup d'etat that established the Second Empire, French workers were politically repressed and demoralized. Proudhon's influence. The ideas of Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, advocating for economic revolution through cooperatives and mutual exchange rather than political action, gained traction among French workers. Proudhon's anarchism, economic over political revolution. Proudhon believed that economic change, not political revolution, was the key to worker liberation. Small ownership and mutual exchange. He envisioned a society of small producers exchanging goods based on the labor embodied in them, facilitated by banks and free credit. The withering away of the state. In Proudhon's view, the state would become obsolete and disappear as exploitation ended, and society was reorganized based on equitable exchange. Dominance of Proudhonism. For a significant time, Proudhon's ideas, despite their petty bourgeois nature, held sway among the more advanced French workers. This meant a focus on economic change through mutualism and cooperatives, rather than political revolution. Other working-class factions. Republicans. Workers not influenced by Proudhonism remained largely aligned with bourgeois Republicans, voting for them in elections. Bonapartists. A small minority of workers supported Napoleon III's regime. Economic prosperity and political apathy. The economic boom France experienced under the Second Empire contributed to the political indifference of many workers. They were less inclined to challenge the status quo when material conditions were improving. Revival of the labor movement. Economic crisis and political excitement. The economic crisis of 1857 and the political tensions surrounding the Italian War of 1859 stirred the working class from its political slumber. Shift in government policy. Facing a resurgent labor movement, the Bonapartist government softened its repressive stance, adopting a more conciliatory approach. Mutual aid societies. Old mutual aid societies saw a revival, and the government tolerated them, hoping they would divert workers from political action. However, revolutionaries, particularly internationalists, used these societies for their own organizing purposes. Emergence of unions. Fighting unions began to appear, focusing on economic struggles. While viewed with suspicion by the government, they were largely left alone due to their non-political nature. These unions became centers for organizing and leading strikes. Political reawakening. From slumber to action. A decade after the suppression of the 1848 revolution, French workers began to regain their political voice. Initial support for Republicans. Initially, workers supported bourgeois Republicans in opposition to Bonapartism. Towards independent action, advanced workers began to advocate for independent political action, separate from bourgeois parties. Early electoral efforts. The 1863 election saw the first attempts to run working-class candidates, though with limited success. This marked the beginning of a shift away from bourgeois leadership and towards an independent working-class political movement. Growing momentum. By the 1864 by-elections, the movement for independent working-class candidates gained further momentum. Working-class consciousness emerges in France. The Manifesto of the 60, written by Prudhomme, declared the existence of distinct class interests between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, advocating for independent working-class political candidates. This marked a significant shift towards class consciousness in the French working class. German proletariat awakens. Following the economic crisis of 1857 and the War of 1859, the German working class began to organize and recover from the suppression of the late 1840s and 1850s. Influence of bourgeois liberalism. Initially, the German workers were heavily influenced by the liberal bourgeoisie's Progressive Party, which sought to win the franchise. The Prussian government, led by Bismarck, also attempted to manipulate workers for its own political gain. Self-help propaganda. Bourgeois propagandists like Schulze Delitz promoted the idea of self-help and thrift as a solution to workers' problems, echoing the views of French economist Bastiat. Lassalle and the rise of independent worker organization. Ferdinand Lassalle played a key role in liberating German workers from bourgeois influence by founding the General Union of German Workers, ADAV, in 1863. This organization aimed to achieve manhood suffrage through peaceful and legal means, ultimately leading to laws favoring the working class. Limited initial success but lasting impact. Despite its limited membership numbers, Lassalle's ADAV significantly contributed to freeing German workers from the grip of liberal bourgeois ideology, paving the way for a more independent working-class movement. Two strands of worker organization in Germany. While Lassalle focused on political organization through the ADAV, a separate movement emerged with the League of German Workers' Unions, led by Bebel and Liebknecht. This group, influenced by Marxist ideas, primarily operated in South Germany and laid the groundwork for the future Social Democratic Party of Germany. Trade unionism takes root. Alongside these political movements, Germany also saw the beginnings of a strong trade union movement, which would eventually become one of the most extensive in the world. Worker activism spreads across Europe. The wave of worker organization extended beyond Germany to Belgium, Austria, Italy, Spain, and Switzerland. Even in Eastern Europe, political revival was evident, particularly in Poland's struggle for national independence. Factors driving international collaboration. The need for international worker solidarity arose from various factors. Sharing knowledge and experience joint efforts for social reform and improved working conditions, preventing the use of foreign workers as strikebreakers, key events catalyzing the international. The Polish uprising highlighted the need for international support for workers' struggles. The 1862 London International Exhibition provided a platform for British and continental workers to connect. French and British workers take the lead. French workers sent delegates to the London exhibition with the unintended consequence of fostering connections with British workers. German communists, including Marx, played a crucial role in promoting the idea of international worker unity among British trade unionists. Shared outrage over the suppression of the Polish uprising further strengthened ties between British and French workers. Momentum builds towards an international organization. Meetings and exchanges between British and French workers, including a key gathering at St. James Hall in 1863, solidified the idea of forming an international organization to protect and advance the interests of the working class. Two bright lights in the darkness. Marx acknowledged two positive trends amidst the generally bleak conditions faced by workers. Legal limits on working hours. The 10 Hours Bill in Britain was a landmark victory, demonstrating the power of worker activism and the potential for state intervention to improve working conditions. Success of cooperatives. The Rochdale Pioneers cooperative model showed that workers could successfully organize production without capitalist exploitation, offering a glimpse of a future where freely associated labor replaces wage labor. The need for political power. Marx emphasized that to achieve widespread emancipation, workers needed to gain control of the state. Cooperative labor alone was insufficient without state support and national-level organization. Unity and knowledge as key to success. The address stressed the importance of worker solidarity across borders and the need for knowledge and organization to effectively leverage their numerical strength. Confronting criminal designs of foreign policy. Marx called on workers to challenge the warmongering and exploitative foreign policies of capitalist governments, advocating for international solidarity and the application of moral and just principles in international relations. Echoing the Communist Manifesto, the address concluded with a powerful call to action. Proletarians of all countries unite! Preamble to the Provisional Rules. This section further elaborated on the core principles of the International. Workers' self-emancipation struggle for equality, not privileged economic emancipation as the primary goal importance of international solidarity, need to avoid past errors and unite the fragmented worker movement's foundational values. The preamble emphasized truth, justice, and morality as guiding principles, advocating for universal human rights and recognizing the balance between rights and duties. Structure and goals of the International. The Provisional Rules outlined the organization's purpose to facilitate communication and cooperation among worker societies worldwide. It established a General Council in London, mandated annual congresses, and encouraged the formation of national worker organizations while respecting the autonomy of local societies. 4. First steps of the International. The London Conference of 1865 initial underestimation. The International Workingmen's Association, the International, was initially underestimated by both its opponents, the bourgeoisie, and many of its own members. The bourgeoisie didn't see it as a threat, and even hoped to use it to further their own political goals. Many workers didn't fully grasp the potential historical impact of a unified international workers' movement. Bourgeois misinterpretation. The bourgeoisie misinterpreted the International's emphasis on self-help and worker emancipation. They saw it as aligning with their own individualistic ideals, failing to recognize the revolutionary implications. Early bourgeois support. The International initially attracted support from various bourgeois individuals and groups. France, liberals, including prominent figures like Jules Simon and Henri Martin, joined the International. Even Freemasons showed sympathy towards the movement. Switzerland. Bourgeois leaders like Colery joined, and radical groups sought alliances with the International to gain advantage in their political struggles. Opportunistic alliances. The bourgeoisie's interest in the International was often driven by opportunism. They saw the growing working-class movement as a potential tool to be manipulated for their own political gain. This was evident in both France and Switzerland, where different factions attempted to use the International to further their own agendas. Misunderstanding within the working class. Even among workers, the true purpose of the International wasn't immediately clear. British workers saw it mainly as a tool for trade unionism and strikes. French Proudhonists viewed it as an academic forum for theoretical discussions rather than a vehicle for political action. Reactionary leadership. The initial leadership of the French section, influenced by Proudhonist ideas, held a reactionary outlook. They favored peaceful and moral methods, misinterpreting the revolutionary potential of the International. Overcoming misconceptions. Despite early misunderstandings in conservative leadership, the International evolved. Workers learned from experience and outgrew their initial leaders. The principle of worker independence allowed the International to shed its reactionary elements and become a truly revolutionary force. Growth and expansion. The International gradually expanded its reach. It began by attracting diverse worker organizations, especially in England. Its influence spread to the continent, with significant growth in German-speaking lands. Strikes played a crucial role in driving workers to seek support and affiliation with the International. Strategic engagement. The General Council actively engaged with contemporary political events to raise awareness of the International. It supported the Polish nationalist movement. It commemorated the victims of the 1848 Paris uprising. It expressed solidarity with the American people during the Civil War and after Lincoln's assassination. Continuity of purpose. These actions demonstrate a continuity with the earlier efforts of groups like the Fraternal Democrats and the International Committee, highlighting the consistent pursuit of international worker solidarity and political action. Slower than expected growth. The International's initial progress was slower than anticipated, prompting the General Council to postpone the first Congress. Reasons for postponement. Several factors contributed to this decision. Potential difficulties in holding a Congress in politically reactionary Belgium. The need to address disagreements among working-class leaders regarding the organization's goals and strategies. The overall immaturity of the workers' movement in many countries. First Conference. Instead of a Congress, the International held its first conference in London in 1865. The agenda focused on international political issues, demonstrating the organization's commitment to linking domestic and foreign policy concerns. Attendees included prominent figures from various countries, forming a core leadership group for the young International. Challenges and weaknesses. Reports from delegates highlighted significant challenges. Weak and fragmented worker organizations in most countries. Lack of funds, resources, and a labor press. Confusion and differing interpretations of the International's goals and purpose. Immature understanding of key issues, such as the importance of Polish independence. Positive developments. Despite these challenges, there were some positive signs. Growing political engagement of the British working class. Recognition of the need for stronger organization and clearer goals. Financial difficulties. The conference revealed the International's severe financial limitations, hindering its ability to conduct effective propaganda and organization. First Congress and growth. The conference paved the way for the first Congress, held in Geneva in 1866. Following the conference, the International experienced significant growth, particularly in France and Switzerland, with new branches and organizations emerging. Switzerland's rising importance. Switzerland surpassed Britain as a leading center for the International due to its political freedoms and its central location attracting diverse workers and political refugees. Organizational hubs. The German-speaking section in Geneva, led by Becker, became the organizing center for German and Austrian workers. The French-speaking section in Geneva extended its influence into France, notably the Jura region, which later became a stronghold of Bakunin's activities. Becker's success. J.P. Becker effectively combined political work with practical initiatives like friendly societies, attracting many Swiss trade unions and other worker organizations to the International. Early political engagement. Swiss workers began attempts to participate in the political arena, although these initial efforts were largely unsuccessful and led to internal conflicts. Colliery's influence. Colliery, a bourgeois Democrat, played a significant role in establishing numerous international sections in the Jura region and founded the newspaper Volks de l'Avenir. Der Vorbote, the German-language Der Vorbote, edited by Becker, became an influential publication for the International in German-speaking regions. International expansion. Despite being preoccupied with national unification, Italian workers showed growing interest in the International. Spain saw the formation of worker cooperatives and the publication of El Obrero in Barcelona. A workers' congress in Chicago in 1866 decided to establish close ties with the International, marking the beginning of its significant growth in the United States.